Hello everyone. We have to discuss now the working with JDBC and how to connect the interfaces and classes with the example. Now we have seen the components and architecture of JDBC. Now moving ahead on JDBC, we have to learn the working of JDBC, a Java application which will communicate with the database and that will require the programming using JDBC API. We need to add the supporting data sources of JDBC driver such as Oracle and SQL Server as and when required in Java application for the JDBC support. We can use this Oracle SQL Server as well as the number of databases at the back end, and maybe you can access the MS Access. We can do this dynamically at runtime, and this JDBC driver intelligently interacts with the respective data sources. Just we have to see this simple JDBC application, and this application which will show the basic steps of database access using JDBC. We have used the JDBC ODBC bridge driver to connect the database, and we have to import this java.sql package that will provide basic SQL functionality. Here in the first statement we have imported java.sql package dot star will give the all the different packages in SQL that is connected, and this public class JDBC tutorial, it will show the all happening with the database with the access as using the JDBC. Now public static void main, that is the main program with the SQL exceptions. Then string driver name is equal to in bracket double quotation sun.jdbc.odbc.jdbc odbc driver, that is driver name. We have already told about this JDBC ODBC bridge driver, that is the first thing we have studied in the JDBC. Then URL, that is JDBC colon ODBC colon XE. Then username is for example John, the password is example John12, and just we have given the query one, that is insert into student values, that is in bracket 101 comma in single quotation Pooja, the double quotation complete, which is showing to insert the students values, whatever it will be inserted the values in our database. Now we have to load the driver class here with this statement class dot for name driver name semicolon. This will load the driver class, then it will object the connection will be obtained by using this connection con is equal to driver manager dot get connection in bracket URL comma username and password. These things we have seen in our earlier videos. We have to obtain a statement, that is statement stmt is equal to con dot create statement, and this statement will obtain a statement for our JDBC connection. Now we have to execute the query, that is integer count is equal to statement dot execute update in bracket query one. So query one is written at the upper side, and this query one will be called here, and the values will be again get towards the count. Now system dot out print line, that is the number of rows affected by this query will be count will be always 1 because the query is only one. If we give the number of queries, we can use the number of count that will be incremented, and this statement that con dot close, it will closing our connection. So this is a JDBC simple application. This will show you how to connect with the JDBC by using the number of statement that we have to load the driver class, we have to obtain the connection, obtain a statement and execute the query. At the last we have to close the connection. Now let us discuss the different interfaces and classes which are actually used in our example. Let us take an overview of these principal interfaces and classes. Let us see with these all number of interfaces and classes with the java.sql package. The first is class.forName. So this is the method which will load the driver's class file into the memory at runtime. So at the runtime, this driver's class file will be loaded in the memory, and there is no need to use new or creation of object. So the class.forName in bracket in double quotation oracle.jdbc.driver.oracle driver, that is the class method. This will be loaded into the memory at the runtime. When we are running our JDBC connection with our application, this class which will load this driver's class file in our memory. Now the second thing we have to keep in mind, that driver manager. Let us look with the description that driver manager class that will register all the drivers for the specific database types. Now we are using the Oracle database, or you can use the SQL database, or you can use the Access database. Which database we are using in our application, that driver manager which will be specify the particular driver for that specific database. For example, Oracle database, in this tutorial we have used, and in the upper side and in our program, this class which will establish a database connection with the server using its get connection method. So get connection method will be used to establish the database connection with the server. Now the third thing is a connection. The connection is an interface. We know that we have already studied about this connection interface, and that will having the number of components in the connection, and it will represent an established database connection. This will establish a database connection with our JDBC database. Using this connection, we can create the statement to execute queries and retrieve the results. So those results which will be get connected with our database, that will be executed and it retrieved. We can get the metadata about the database, and it will also close the connection. Now what is the syntax about that? That the connection con is equal to driver manager dot get connection. So that connection will be done with this in double quotation in specified, that JDBC colon oracle colon thin colon @ localhost colon 1521 colon oracle orcl double quotation complete. In another double quotation comma login1 comma in another double quotation pwd1 double quotation complete parenthesis complete and semicolon. So that will connect all the interface with the database connection. Now these all things we have already seen about in our previous videos. Now the next statement is a statement and prepared statement. Now what is this statement and prepared statement? The statement and prepared statement, it will interface the execution of static SQL query and parameterized SQL queries. The statement interface is the super interface of the prepared statement interface. So statement interface is a super interface, and then prepared statement is a derived interface. Now The commonly used methods for these interfaces are, there are three different commonly used methods. The first A is Boolean execute in bracket string SQL. This method will execute a general SQL statement and it will return true if the query returns a result set and false if the query returns nothing. Now we can use this method with a statement only. So that statement is a superior than prepared statement. The next is a integer execute update. So that is, this method is executes an insert, update or delete statement. If then return an updated account showing the number of rows updated affected. So for example, one row inserted or two rows inserted or zero rows affected or zero rows inserted, whatever, the execute update method will execute this insert, update and delete statement. Now the next statement method is a result set execute query. So this method executes a select statement and returns an object of a result set. This returned object contains results returned by the query. Now this result set execute query, this method will execute a select statement. Now this is very important that this will execute a select statement. The execute update method will execute insert, update and delete statements, and the Boolean execute method that will execute the general SQL statements. So that will execute the SQL statement, but it will return true if the query will return the result set and false if the query will return nothing. So these three things we have to keep in mind in our statement and prepared statement. So result set is also important thing where this that will execute the select statement and it will returns a object of result set. Then the fifth part that will be interface, that is the result set. The result set is an interface that will contain the table data written by the select query. Whatever the output will be by the using the query, that will be returned to the result set, and that is the interface which is given in the our program. Now, what is the SQL exception? That this SQL exception class is a checked exception, and if we can declare it so for the above methods which will throw this exception that if we it will be required if the errors will be there in our application, the SQL exception will be thrown in to the programmer. Now we have to provide a mechanism to explicitly catch this exception, and we can call these methods of the above classes. If there will be any problem, that will be directly connected with our application and that will be explicitly cached with the exception. Thank you very much for watching this video. We shall see the next thing in our next video. Thank you.